Welcome to This Week in Local, a Localogy podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Localogy analysts Mike Boland and Charles Lachlan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Mike Boland, and my guest today is Chris Vanover, who's Senior Director of Product Management of Bluehost. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we've got a lot to get into, but first, for the sake of context for our audience that isn't familiar with you and your background, tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Bluehost.
Right. So I've got a bachelor's of science degree in computer science. I've been working in the technology industry, mainly recently in public-private clouds and for software development. I've been with Bluehost for 5 years, and my role is product management, which is really helping get new products to market, making sure that they get there with quality and meet the demands of the customers.
Yeah. Lots of great product releases over the last year and more. From our perspective, we've been covering at Localogy, so we'll get into some of those. Now, sort of the same backgrounder / intro for Bluehost itself, for those unfamiliar. Tell us a bit about the company and any sort of figures you can give us for, characterize its operational scale and sort of where it sits.
Right. So Bluehost is, we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. So we've been around in the hosting industry for a long time. Started with shared hosting back in the day, expanded to the VPS and DEDI, and now cloud. Also do domain management. But really our target is that small business that wants to create a website, whether it is a simple business website all the way up through a full-fledged high performance e-commerce website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about WordPress, right? I mean, that's where Bluehost has sort of planted its flag and is sort of best of breed within that world. And I'll say, just for the sake of context, that I am a self-taught WordPress front-end developer. I love WordPress. I've built a few businesses around it and a few websites. I love the expansiveness of the platform in that it's open and it has attracted all kinds of different functionality from this massive universe of plugins and themes and various hosts. So it's a very expansive universe. So why the focus on WordPress from your perspective in terms of Bluehost's business and its sort of target market? And what do you see as sort of the advantages of WordPress as a publishing platform?
Yeah, mainly it's scale, right? So we mentioned our hosting. We have 2 million websites today that we host on Bluehost. Many of them are WordPress, and it's because of its feature functionalities, right? There's a lot of proprietary builders out there, but we found a lot of people get locked into those, right? You can't scale. I want a custom form so I can gather information from my customer. Oh, sorry, the proprietary builder doesn't have that type of form. I want to grow my website to do this. Oh, sorry, the proprietary builder doesn't do that. So the customers quickly outgrow those proprietary builders, where WordPress is very scalable. First, it's open source. So by its in large, it's free. There's 55,000 plugins available on the open source market for WordPress. So there's really infinite possibilities of growth. There are huge companies that run WordPress. 43% of all websites in the world run on WordPress. Right?
Yeah.
The number two CMS or web builder is less than 5%. So by far, WordPress dominates the industry. And so Bluehost, as we've grown over the years, have really become the prominent WordPress hosting provider. So many people, when they think of WordPress, they think of Bluehost. And just because we have that expertise in helping customers develop and build their brand on WordPress.
Yeah.
We have, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, you first.
Yeah. So, we have this Wonder Suite, right? So we can offer on Bluehost the ease of use of a proprietary builder, but yet still also have the power and flexibility and scalability of WordPress.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to Wonder Suite, which I think is sort of an exemplar of a lot of the things that you guys are doing. I want to first zero in on a few things you said, and I agree with you in terms of the scalability of WordPress as a platform. Some of my favorite moments of building things with WordPress is when I think, you know, does this little weird sort of maybe esoteric, bit of functionality exist? And I'll sort of look it up in the sort of plugin directories, and sure enough, someone has thought of it, right? So I think that in that way, it's particularly important for the next question, which is small businesses. So you probably have a lot of target markets, a lot of people that pick up and run with WordPress, particularly small businesses is a focus for Localogy, as you probably know. What are some of the ways that Bluehost is addressing small businesses in terms of the products it's building?
Well, that's really the power of WordPress there as well, is we can offer all those plugins, right? So, you want to offer a scheduler to allow a customer to book appointments, right? Do you want to offer, um, your product online? There's wide range of services that are offered through plugins, and then our professional services can help customers implement that.
Yeah. I think that part is key because one of the things, I mean, I don't want to be too cheerleaderish about WordPress because there are also challenges. It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Because it has become so expansive, that has also sort of let some complexity or the paradox of choice sort of into the
Yeah.
equation for small businesses that want simplicity. So I think the 1-2 punch of that scalability and expandability, but some, I don't want to say hand-holding, but at least some direction in terms of finding the right mix of plugins and then also executing them is, I think, probably a winning formula. Now that gets into sort of the next topic, which is hosting. Bluehost primarily is a web host, but hosting in general, and I think Bluehost has certainly followed this trend over the last few years, has very much expanded up the stack. It's not just about the traditional role of being a web host, but adding in more tools, whether they be site building tools or e-commerce functionality or other just various, things that are adjacent to running a website. I think Wondersuite is actually a great example of that. So tell us about that trend in general in terms of hosts expanding in functionality, and particularly what you've been doing.
Sure. Initially, you just wanted to get a website online, right? If you had a business, you needed to get a website. And then it expanded. And today, you're not a legitimate business if you don't have a website, right? If I see your name, I'm going to look up your website. If you don't have a website, I'm going to assume you're not a legitimate business.
Yep.
So, but it's expanded beyond there. So now, it's understanding what services do you offer, what products do you offer, but also it's doing a one-stop shop. We offer the domain, we offer hosting, but also email. You want your email address that matches your company name, that matches your domain. Security, how do we offer security to make sure your website is secure? SEO, how do we make sure when someone searches for you on Google, they're going to find your company, they're going to find your website? So we offer the SEO, or the search engine optimization products to help make sure you get found online. And then, as you mentioned, e-com, right? Offering the e-com services. How do how do I get my products online, right? How do I take the money? How do I do shipping, right? How do I track the orders? All that through our e-com services.
Absolutely. And it occurs to me as you're talking that it makes sense for a trusted web host to be able to provide these adjacent and expansive services, because back to an earlier point, the sort of wild west that the sort of plugin universe has become, though we love it, though it is really the heart of all that expansiveness, brings in some things I mentioned, like the paradox of choice or trust, or it's almost like you sort of de-risk and provide a comfort blanket for small businesses by saying this is not only sort of the endorsed feature for this particular functionality you're looking for, but it prevents you from having to go out into that wild west and find something. It's those core features that you're putting right in front of them, which makes a lot of sense. Is that a fair way to look at it?
It absolutely is. And that's one of the items that really differentiates Bluehost, is that we can cover it all, right? And we can guarantee you that, we're not going to say, well, we can't do that or not here, right? There are some competitors that will do websites, but we don't do your domain. You got to do your domain somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, we gear towards the small business. That's the majority of our customers, right? Starting out small, whether it's just a business website, but then scale, right? Allowing you to add the complexity. And if you don't have the technical ability to do it yourself, we can help you there. Just help you with a form all the way to develop the entire website for you, help you with your e-commerce site, and just grow. We can help you grow into whatever you need, right? If it's just simply a small business or you want to expand to multiple locations, a higher performance website, we have all the capabilities and all the products where you don't have to try to figure out, well, how do I glue these 2-3 different companies together to serve my online needs.
Yeah. Now, let's take one of those functions as an example and just sort of unpack it. So, page building functionality. Um, we have a lot of we see a lot of third party solutions out there that are pretty popular, like Divi and Elementor. And those are essentially plugins from a technical perspective. What are some of the advantages of having some of these functions at the host level? Is it greater integration? What are some of the advantages you see and this gets back to some of the things you're offering with Wondersuite? How is that an advantage in terms of its sort of vertical integration with the hosting that you provide?
Yeah. Yeah. So the Wondersuite and the Wonder blocks is native WordPress, right? It's not some other piece that's plugged in that requires yet another support, right? So we know that when you upgrade WordPress, or we upgrade WordPress for you as part of our, a managed WordPress solution, that it's going to work, right? It's not a kind of a side add-on with you're pulling in yet another company. It's all integrated. It's a seamless experience for the customer.
Absolutely. So let's get into another sort of area where it's a big initiative for Bluehost, which is cloud hosting. But first, can you give us a sort of crash course, or give our audience a crash course in exactly what cloud hosting is when compared with traditional web hosting? And then we can get into the why.
Yeah. So a traditional web hosting, or we call shared hosting, is one physical server, and there's a whole bunch of customers on that. Think of it as an apartment building, right? So you've got one apartment building and numerous customers, numerous websites sharing that server. Right? And they've got their own walls, they've got their own doors, so they're secure, but there's still a lot of resource sharing going on, right? If one of them is a little too loud, playing music too loud, you can bother your neighbor. And shared hosting is kind of the same way, that you don't have guaranteed performance. You can still have some issues where, your neighbor that's on that same server had a sale yesterday, or had some social media really take off, got a surge of traffic, and now your site is suffering because of that. Yeah. Whereas with the more advanced products, such as our new cloud hosting, you have dedicated resources. So not only do you have not just one server, you have failover. So if there's a hardware outage, you've got another server, another data center that you will immediately flip to. So you don't have to worry about, well, are you going to take my server down tonight for maintenance? Or, it's hardware, it fails, right? If that server, has a hard drive that goes bad, or, some component goes bad, am I going to lose that server? No, you have automatic failover. You have dedicated resources. So you know how many resources you have, but it's also flexible. Whereas, hey, I've got this great social media campaign. It's really taken off. I'm going to do a sale this weekend. Give me more resources. I need more power in my server for this weekend. And then next weekend, I might scale it back a little bit, once the sale's over, or once the surge is over. So you can scale up, give it more horsepower for a few days, and scale it back.
Mm-hmm. It almost sounds analogous to a CDN, or a content delivery network. And that's more in a networking sense. But in terms of, at a high level, there seem to be some parallels in terms of balancing the load. also sort of geographic distribution. Would that be a fair
Yeah.
analogy?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great analogy, because the CDN really caches your static content around the globe,
Mhm.
right? So if you've got someone in Europe that hits your website, they're going to get really fast page load times for that first page. But that's just static. If I have
Mhm.
dynamic content, if I need to hit the database to do a lookup for your product, so do a search or search my order, that's going to have to hit your actual servers. So that
Yeah.
having that extra horsepower there is gives you more power just beyond the CDN, which is
Yeah.
it's really great if you've got a dynamic website. If you
Yeah.
really need a lot of interactivity that you're not going to get from a CDN, then you know you've got that piece there as well.
That makes sense. Now, with that sort of introductory backdrop about cloud hosting, what is Bluehost doing in terms of integrating it? Is this an ongoing initiative to sort of transition over to it exclusively, or is this something that you're offering in sort of a tiered sort of service model?
Yeah, this is really a professionally tiered market. This is really for someone that's got either really high performance demands. I mean,
Yep.
I'm going to have a lot of customers at certain times, or really important availability. Right, I cannot afford for my website to go down for an hour. Right, I've got all this money I spent on marketing. I've got all this great SEO. I'm getting great traffic. Don't turn my customers off by having a downtime and them get an error message. So
Yep.
no, we're keeping all the tiers. So shared is great for most customers. I mean, it provides the static content that those customers need. But then as they grow, as your business grows, as your online presence grows, then you can move up the stack and move into a cloud type environment.
Yeah.
So no, it's all there. It's just us continuing to grow into the demands of the market.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So we talked a lot about what you've been doing and what you're doing. Now let's look forward, right? So to the extent that you can talk about it, at least, tell us a bit about the roadmap. Where are there sort of opportunity gaps, as I like to call them, in terms of things that you're looking at that you're excited to evolve the product in the coming months and years?
Most of it is around what we've stated already, just taking that performance and scalability to an even higher level,
Hmm.
supporting even better volume. But from a WordPress perspective, it's making it even easier to use. So, as we said, WordPress is by far the major 800-pound gorilla in the website development space. But the paradox you mentioned, flexibility
Yeah.
brings complexity.
Yep.
And so we're doing a lot of work there to ease that. So even though you're a new customer, a new user, you're logging in that first time, historically WordPress has been a little daunting. You kind of get this black and white screen and some simple menus, and it's now what, right?
Yeah.
So we mentioned Wondersuite already. We've got more coming there. I mentioned AI, but there's more coming with Wondersuite to really help that customer, either first time customer, helping them get off the ground, or the advanced customer, helping them do more with on their own.
Yeah. I like to think of sort of a vanilla WordPress install brand new as sort of like a Harley Davidson right off the line. Most people that are really into them don't just take it as is. They do a lot of work to customize them and, you know, remove the muffler to put on one that's louder and, shine it up in all kinds of ways. So it's almost analogous to a lot of those products that people sort of start with, but then it's, again, very expandable. Now, beyond some of those functional areas that you're excited about in terms of product evolution, let's go back to some of the small business dynamics. The products that you've launched in the past, including Wondersuite, seem to have a lot of great purpose-built features for some high-value business verticals. So, for example, we've seen a lot of great features that cater to restaurants with sort of developing a menu, or spas or home services companies. So what do you kind of currently do to serve those specific needs? Because that, you mentioned the word sort of paradox. There's sort of a paradox here in terms of providing the functionality for specific verticals, whether it be, medical or retail, but also not sort of, I guess, ignoring the larger needs of the broader needs of the market. So what is Bluehost doing to really take advantage of that opportunity where there might be some sort of custom or purpose-built functionality that really can super serve some of those high-value verticals?
Yeah, most of the vertical work is done through professional services because they really understand those particular markets and
I see.
what's really needed, and that comes back to our size, our scale, right? We've got such a large both the technical support and professional support groups. They understand all these markets around the world and what the demands are and what the trends are.
So
To
those would
expand on.
be, just to clarify, you're talking about sort of third-party agencies or consultants that can work with the business on their
No, I'm talking
customization
about
needs?
our
Oh, I'm
internal,
sorry.
right?
You
Right.
have
So
that.
we have
Great, great.
you're right, internal professional services that we, said if whether you need, one particular, um, form or one particular area help with, or just doing an entire vertical, they can really help in those areas.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense that the customization happens at that level as opposed to within the product design. And the product design inherently is flexible enough to then be tweaked and customized with the help of those professional services functions.
Yeah.
Would that be the right way
Right.
to say it?
Right. And they've got experience also with some of the plugins that, are vertical specific. Real estate is, a huge area,
Mm-hmm.
of, generating the correct site for a particular real estate agency.
Makes sense. Now, winding down here, let's go back to WordPress in general. WordPress has many versions as a platform. They have sort of a committee that helps sort of decide what comes next, and everyone gets that sort of functionality, everyone from the developers that can tap into it to end users. I think we're on somewhere in the WordPress version 6 dot something. What are your thoughts in working and having such great technical aptitude and working in the WordPress world for a while? What are some of the core platform functions that you are either predicting or excited to possibly see next?
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to attend WordCamp Asia just a couple
Huh.
weeks ago, and got to hear a lot of the collaborators in the communities that are out there building WordPress. I mean, it's open source product, right? So there's thousands of contributors around the world that help build and enhance WordPress, and a lot of it is ease of use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Continuing to expand its capabilities while also making it easier to use. Multilingual is one of the items that's on the roadmap, right? Making it easier to support multiple languages simultaneously for various groups.
Yeah. I'm now just warming up to the Gutenberg editor. Like many people, I had sort of a knee-jerk reaction at first, but I do see a lot of its benefits in terms of having a block-based orientation. So I'll be excited to see some of those updates as well in terms of ease of use and simplicity. But that's actually all the time we have. I want to thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. You can find the show on all major podcast networks and find out more at localogy.com. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Your engagement helps others find us. And if you're interested in being a guest or sponsor, you can email us at podcast@localogy.com. So I'm Mike Boland. Our producer is Dara Sweat, and this week's guest has been Chris Vanover. You can find out more about Chris and Bluehost in the show notes. So thanks for listening, and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Localogy's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.